July 31st, 2022, approximately 5:30 a.m., a quiet residential street in Strongsville, Ohio. In the hazy morning light, a Toyota Camry sped down the road like a phantom vehicle. Suddenly, a horrific crash tore through the morning peace. The car smashed head-on into the brick wall of a building on the side of the road. The impact was so tremendous that the entire structure shook. The car's front end was completely crushed, as if put through a compactor. Clouds of smoke, oil, and the smell of sulfur began to rise. People rushed out of nearby houses in alarm. The scene that greeted them was heart-wrenching. Two young men in the back seat, 21-year-old Devin Flanagan and a 20-year-old Dominic Russo, had died instantly from the impact. Trapped in the driver's seat was 19-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla. Rescue teams had to use hydraulic tools to extract her, a process that took about 40 minutes. She was critically injured but miraculously alive. At first it seemed like a terrible car accident. A young driver, perhaps a victim of fatigue or recklessness. But as the investigation progressed, police and detectives uncovered a horrifying and unimaginable truth. The car's event data recorder, or black box, revealed that in the 8 seconds before the crash, the car's speed was 100 miles per hour, approx. 161 kilometers per hour. No attempt had been made to brake. Instead, the accelerator was pressed 100%, as if the driver was intentionally flooring it. This was no accident. It was an intentional, horrific, full-throttle ramming. The question was this a suicide attempt or a premeditated murder, or something even harder to comprehend? The victims' backgrounds. Devin Flanagan, 21. Devin was a sociable, hard-working and ambitious young man. A resident of North Royalton, Devin worked at a local car wash, but his eyes were set on bigger dreams. He dreamed of becoming a mechanic and opening his own garage. His mother, Tina Flanagan, describes him as a loving, responsible son, always ready to help his family. He was always smiling, Tina said in an interview. He had his whole life ahead of him. Devin and Mackenzie had been friends for years, but the nature of their relationship was not always clear. Sometimes friends, sometimes more, sometimes on, sometimes off. Whether they were on a break at the time of death became a crucial part of the investigation later. Dominic Russo, 20. Dominic was Mackenzie's boyfriend. He was a quiet, kind, and artistic person. He was interested in music and art, and often put his thoughts into a sketchbook. His family and friends describe him as a gentle-hearted person who was always there to help others. Dominic and Mackenzie had been in a relationship for several months and had even met each other's families, indicating a serious commitment. There were no public signs of major trouble in their relationship. Emotional connection. Both young men were on the threshold of their lives. They had friends, family, dreams, and a whole life to live. Their photos told the story of typical happy American youth, smiling, spending time together, weaving dreams for the future. Their deaths not only devastated two families, but also plunged the entire Strongsville community into deep shock and disbelief. This was the kind of case that made people ask, if this could happen to us, it could happen to anyone. Mackenzie Shirilla. An enigma who was the driver herself. At the time of the crash, Mackenzie Shirilla was 19 years old and a recent high school graduate. Raised in Strongsville, Mackenzie was known in her school as a popular and socially active girl. She participated in sports and had many friends. On the outside, she seemed like a normal teenager. However, aspects of her inner life and behavior did not match this normal image, and later became the focus of the investigation. A complex web of relationships. Mackenzie had a long, emotionally charged and volatile history with Devin Flanagan. They had broken up and gotten back together multiple times. The investigation revealed that just before the crash, Mackenzie wanted to restart a romantic relationship with Devin, but he had clearly and firmly refused. This rejection was a deep emotional blow for her. Signs of mental health issues. According to evidence later presented in court by the defense, Mackenzie was struggling with depression and anxiety. Suicide-related search history was found on her phone. She had expressed feelings of exhaustion and sadness about life to some of her friends. Bizarre post-crash behavior. This was the aspect that drew the most attention. Despite being critically injured and having lost two close friends, Mackenzie's behavior showed a strange sense of normalcy. She remained active on social media after being discharged from the hospital. She posted pictures of herself attending a music concert and going to parties just weeks after the crash, smiling in the photos. When questioned by police, she gave them vague and changing statements. First, she said the car lost control, then said she couldn't remember. Alleged lack of shock or remorse. The prosecution presented this entire pattern of behavior as evidence of Mackenzie's lack of shock or remorse. Their argument was that no normal person, even one who had caused such an accident unintentionally, would return to normal life so quickly, especially when two close friends had died in that accident. Mackenzie Shirilla was a contradictory character. On one hand, a popular teenager. On the other, struggling with emotional turmoil. On one hand, a critically injured victim. On the other, her behavior raised questions. Was she truly an emotionally unstable young woman who made a terrible mistake, or was she a calculating and emotionless criminal, incapable of understanding the consequences of her actions? That final night and horrific morning. July 30th, 2022, evening. Mackenzie, Devin and Dominic spend time together. Evidence suggests a tense conversation occurred between Mackenzie and Devin during this time, in which Devin once again made it clear he did not want to re-enter a romantic relationship. July 31st, around 5 a.m. The three are still together. They get into a car from the Cuyahoga Falls area, heading towards Strongsville. This drive was about 20 miles, 32 kilometers. Around 5:25 a.m. Local CCTV cameras captured the car driving at normal speed through Strongsville's residential neighborhoods. No disturbance or struggle was visible in the car. No other car was following them. 5:30 a.m., seconds before impact. The car reaches Peridot Drive, a straight, two-lane, quiet street. It is here that something horrific and intentional happens. The car's accelerator is suddenly pressed to 100%. The final 8 seconds. The car's speed rapidly increases to 100 miles per hour, 161 kilometers per hour. The brake pedal is not pressed at all. The steering wheel remains steady. No turn is attempted. The car crashes straight into a sturdy brick wall. Around 5:31 a.m. The first 911 call comes in. The caller mentions the sound of a terrible crash and asks for help. The time gap and mystery. The biggest question was, what happened inside the car during those final 8 seconds? Did Mackenzie intentionally press the accelerator? Was there a fight that caused a loss of control? Forensic evidence began to answer these questions, and the answers were shocking. Arrest and initial interrogation, the growth of suspicion. The immediate post-crash investigation resembled a vehicle accident case. Mackenzie was viewed as a victim, However, as data from the car's black box and other forensic evidence began to surface, the direction of the investigation shifted. Arrest. Mackenzie Shirilla was officially arrested when investigators had gathered sufficient evidence that this was not an accident, but an intentional act. Before her arrest, investigators questioned her multiple times, but her story remained inconsistent and changing. 1. Detail. From the time of her arrest was particularly jarring and was later presented by the prosecution in court as evidence of her calm and self-centered in nature. As police officers went to handcuff her, Mackenzie calmly made a request. She asked if they could carefully remove her bracelet, so it wouldn't get damaged. In that moment, as she faced charges for 2 murders, her concern was for the safety of a piece of jewelry. This detail profoundly influenced public perception of her. Contradictions in interrogation. She said she tried her best to brake, but the black box showed 0% pressure on the brake pedal. She claimed she didn't remember what happened, yet talked about trying to brake. When asked about the tense text messages between her and Devin, she tried to downplay their significance. Due to all this, the prosecution now had ample grounds to charge her with aggravated murder. Crime scene. Details, the story forensics told. Location. Peridot Drive, Strongsville, Ohio. A straight 2-lane residential street with very little traffic at night. The road was dry and clear, with no adverse weather conditions. The scene. The car. The front end of the 2021 Toyota Camry was completely crushed. The windshield was shattered, the roof crumpled, and part of the engine had intruded into the cabin. The impact was so severe that the car's chassis was twisted. Impact marks. There were deep scars on a
lean to purchase a sizable
with bricks broken. Car parts, glass shards, and fluids were scattered on the ground. Forced entry or staged scene? There was no forced entry. The question was whether the crash was staged. Forensic experts testified that on a straight road, if brakes had been applied or the steering wheel turned even slightly, the crash could have been avoided or its severity reduced. The choice of a stationary and rigid object like a brick wall guaranteed maximum damage. Clues. Lack of skid marks. There were no brake skid marks. On the road, this proved brakes were not applied before the crash. A peculiar forensic detail. Investigators found a fuzzy pink Prada slide slipper lodged on the accelerator pedal. This indicated Mackenzie was not wearing proper shoes for driving, but slippery slides which could affect pedal control. However, this did not negate the intentional act of pressing the accelerator. Evidence and clues, a mountain of digital and forensic proof. This case hinged on technical and forensic evidence, which painted a clear picture. 1. The car's event data recorder, EDR, black box. This was the most crucial and decisive evidence. 5 seconds before impact. Speed approx. 45 to 50 miles per hour. Accelerator, 0%. From 5 seconds to 0 seconds before impact. The accelerator was suddenly and fully pressed to 100%. Speed rapidly increased to 100 miles per hour. Final 8 seconds. Accelerator remained consistently at 100%. Brake pedal pressure remained at 0%. The steering angle showed no significant change, only a 1-degree minor change due to the road's curve. 2. CCTV footage. Cameras from nearby homes and businesses showed the car driving normally and under control. until just before the crash. No pursuit, no emergency, no attempt to avoid a collision. 3. Mobile phone records and messages. Recent tense texts were found between Devin and Mackenzie, where Devin clearly and firmly stated he did not want to get back into a romantic relationship with her. These messages were from just hours before the crash. Suicide and death-related search history was found on Mackenzie's phone. However, no suicide note, diary entry, or clear mention of a plan was found. 4. Post-mortem reports, autopsy. Devin Flanagan and Dominic Russo. Both died from massive and immediate trauma. No traces of drugs or alcohol were found in their systems. They were completely healthy. Mackenzie Shirilla. A small amount of marijuana was found in her blood, but experts testified this level was not impairing for driving ability. No other intoxicants were found. Investigation angle, from accident to murder investigation. Initial misconception. Initially, local police and media considered it a horrific but unfortunate traffic accident. Mackenzie was also seen as a victim and unlucky driver. So, the turning point. When the data from the car's black box emerged, the entire story flipped. 100 miles per hour speed, 100% accelerator for 8 seconds, 0% brake. This pattern did not match an accident, loss of consciousness, or medical emergency. It was a conscious, sustained, and intentional act. This is where the investigation turned into a bid'anin potential murder case. Focus of the investigation. The question was no longer what happened, but why did it happen? Investigators began exploring 3 possibilities. 1. Suicide attempt. Did Mackenzie consciously decide to kill herself and her friends? 2. Murder-suicide. Did she intend to hurt or kill Devin and perhaps Dominic, even if it meant her own death? Was this the result of rage from rejection? 3. Vehicular homicide. Was this an act of rage or extreme recklessness? As the text messages and Mackenzie's post-crash behavior came to light, the second scenario gained strength. Post-crash behavior, the lack of shock. Allegation. Mackenzie's post-crash behavior became a central piece of evidence for the prosecution. Just weeks after being discharged from the hospital, she was seen going to concerts and attending parties, posting smiling pictures on social media. The prosecutor called this evidence of a profound lack of shock, remorse, or empathy. At the time of her arrest, she requested her bracelet be carefully removed to avoid damage, a moment that presented an image of her as self-centered and calm. Twists and turns. The trial began in September 2023. Mackenzie chose a bench trial over a jury trial, meaning the case was presented before a single judge, Judge Daniel Gator, without members of the public, a jury. This might have been a strategic decision, perhaps thinking a judge would consider the facts more dispassionately without being swayed by emotions. Several interesting and tragic twists occurred during the trial. The anger and pain of the victims' families. There were rounds of emotional statements in court. Dominic Russo's father, Tony Russo, looking directly at Mackenzie, said, "You stole my son. You murdered him." He described how his family was going through the pain of a living burial. Devin's mother, Tina Flanagan, said Mackenzie had tore our hearts out. Mackenzie's defense, mental health and suicide attempt. Her lawyers presented a defense centered on mental health. They claimed Mackenzie was struggling with deep depression and had attempted suicide. They argued her core intent was not to kill anyone, but that she wanted to kill herself, and this was a horrific accident that her friends got caught in. They presented a psychologist who testified to symptoms of borderline personality disorder in Mackenzie. Prosecution's argument: premeditated murder. The prosecution argued this was not an accident or a suicide attempt. It was a planned, deliberate murder. They called the car's black box data the smoking gun. They showed text messages proving motive: retribution. They presented Mackenzie's post-crash behavior, parties, concerts, as evidence of her lack of shock or remorse. Breaking of the alibi. Mackenzie had no alibi because she was the driver. The defense's suicide theory weakened when it was revealed she never wrote a suicide note, never claimed a suicide attempt upon arrival at the hospital, and told police she tried to break, which was a lie. Verdict and sentencing. Judge Daniel Gaeta carefully heard all the evidence, testimonies, and emotional statements. The main question before him was, had the prosecution proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mackenzie had intentionally killed both young men? In August 2023, the judge delivered his verdict. Mackenzie Shirilla was found guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, and 4 other related charges. He found the car's black box data decisive. Pressing the accelerator to 100% for 8 seconds, without braking, without steering. This was not the pattern of an accident, loss of consciousness, or foot slipping. It was a conscious and sustained decision. The judge concluded that she had killed Devin, Flanagan, and Dominic Russo intentionally and with prior calculation and design. How was it planned? Accepting the prosecution's argument, the judge concluded this was not a complex plot, but a momentary yet calculated act of anger, retaliation, and despair. Intense rage after being rejected by Devin, perhaps dissatisfaction with Dominic's relationship, these emotions combined to form a deadly and inhuman decision. She used the car as a weapon. The mistake that led to her capture. The biggest mistake was modern technology. She likely did not think the car's black box recorded every action in such detail. Her other mistake was surviving. Had she also died in that crash, this case might never have been investigated as a homicide. It would likely have been dismissed as a tragic suicide accident. Sentencing was pronounced in September 2023. Judge Daniel Gaeta sentenced Mackenzie Shirilla to life in prison. He determined she must serve a minimum of 15 years before being eligible for parole. That is, she cannot even apply for parole before 2038, by which time she will be over 30 years old. Parole is in no way guaranteed. Sentencing her, the judge said this was one of the most horrific and tragic events to come before my bench. He stated, "You had every opportunity to stop. You chose not to stop." After the sentencing, Devin's mother, Tina Flanagan, said, "Justice was served today, but my son is not coming back." Dominic's family said they now live in a different kind of prison. The prison of pain and memories from losing their loved one. The courtroom as an emotional battlefield. The voices of the victims' families. Dominic's father, Tony Russo, told Mackenzie directly, "You stole my son. I will never forgive you." Devin's mother, Tina Flanagan, said her world split into black and white that day. Moore's, a journalist present in the courtroom, reported that during these statements, the room held a collective breath, with only the sound of crying audible. Mackenzie's reaction. Witnesses reported Mackenzie sat mostly expressionless and impassive, which, contrary to the defense's claim of deep depression, lent weight to the prosecution's claim of being emotionless. The story of Mackenzie Shirilla is not just a crime story. It is a complex saga of tragic loss, broken families, the search for justice, and the dark side of youth. It reminds us that our decisions, especially those made in anger or despair, can have severe and irreversible consequences. It also reminds us that life is a fragile and precious gift, which can be lost forever due to a moment's mistake, not just for oneself, but for others as well. This case is closed, but it leaves an open question. What can we as a society do to prevent such a tragedy from happening again? Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.